My brother ruined my life, married my ex, and now begs me for help after losing everything. Growing up in a small suburban neighborhood, my brother Liam and I couldn't have been more different. Liam was the golden boy, the one with the charm and charisma that turned every stranger into a friend. Alex, was quieter, more reserved. Where Liam dazzled the world with his effortless charm, I believed in hard work and perseverance. Our parents adored Liam. To them, he was the perfect son. The one who could make people laugh, the one who made them proud at school events, and the one who seemed destined for greatness. I was often the afterthought, the one who worked in the background while Liam basked in the spotlight. Despite the differences, we got along as kids. Liam could make me laugh like no one else, and I admired his confidence. But as we grew older, things started to change. The charm that made Liam so likable also made him reckless. He was the life of the party, but he never thought about consequences. I, on the other hand, was the one picking up the pieces when things went wrong. When I met Grace during my final year of university, I felt like I'd found someone that was entirely mine. Grace was everything I had ever hoped for in a partner. She was brilliant, with a sharp wit that kept me on my toes, and she had a warmth that made people feel at ease. From the moment we met, I knew she was special. We spent hours talking about our dreams for the future. She wanted to open her own graphic design studio. I dreamed of becoming a software developer. Together, we imagined a life full of love, laughter, and mutual support. Introducing her to my family felt like a big step. I wanted them to see the incredible woman who had chosen me. My parents were polite, offering the usual compliments about her intelligence and beauty. Liam, however, was his usual self, charming and magnetic. He greeted Grace with that confident smile of his, immediately making her laugh with one of his clever quips. I watched as they exchanged a few jokes, and for a moment, a flicker of unease settled in my chest. Grace was laughing a little too hard at his jokes, her eyes lingering on him just a second longer than necessary. But I brushed it off. Liam had that effect on people. Everyone loved him, and Grace was no exception. Besides, she was my fiancée, and I trusted her completely. What I didn't realize was that Liam's charm wasn't always harmless. Beneath the surface of his easygoing demeanor was a selfishness I had spent years ignoring, and I was about to learn just how far he would go to get what he wanted. At first, I didn't notice the subtle shift. Grace and I were busy with wedding planning, balancing our full-time jobs, and trying to save money for the future. We were a team, or so I thought. But as weeks turned into months, I began to feel a strange distance growing between us. Grace started pulling away in small, almost imperceptible ways. She stopped holding my hand as often, her kisses felt mechanical, and our conversations, once so full of energy and laughter, became more forced. I chalked it up to stress. Planning a wedding wasn't easy, and we were both juggling a lot. But then there were the moments I couldn't ignore. Liam started showing up more often. He dropped by unannounced, flashing his usual grin and joking about how he needed a break from his hectic life. Grace always seemed genuinely happy to see him. She'd light up in a way that I hadn't seen in weeks, laughing at his jokes and hanging on his every word. One night, we were sitting in the living room, discussing the wedding guest list. Liam had dropped by again, claiming he needed advice about a girl he was dating. As Grace listened to his stories, she seemed completely absorbed. I tried to interject, to bring the conversation back to our plans, but it was like I wasn't even there. "Alex," she said at one point, her tone sharper than I expected. "Can you let Liam finish? He's talking." I blinked, taken aback. Grace had never spoken to me like that before. Liam shot me an apologetic smile, but it was clear he wasn't sorry. He was enjoying this. That night, after Liam left, I tried to bring it up. "Is everything okay with us?" I asked her. "You've been different lately." Grace hesitated, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "It's just stress," she said finally. "Work, the wedding, everything. I need some space to think." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Space to think? We were supposed to be planning our future together, and now she needed space? I wanted to press her, to demand answers, but something in her tone warned me not to. Over the next few weeks, things only got worse. Grace started coming home later than usual, claiming she had to work overtime. She'd be on her phone constantly, her face lighting up with a smile whenever a message came through. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was overthinking everything, until the day she sat me down and shattered my world. We were in the kitchen, the place where we used to spend hours cooking together and talking about our dreams. But this time, there was no warmth in her eyes, no laughter in her voice. "Alex," she began, her voice trembling, "I can't marry you." I stared at her, uncomprehending. "What are you talking about? We've been planning this for months." She looked down at her hands, unable to meet my gaze. "I've been trying to make this work, but I've fallen for someone else." The words didn't register at first. It was like my brain couldn't process what she was saying. What do you mean, someone else? Who? When she finally looked up, her eyes were filled with tears. It's Liam. The room spun around me. My brother? My own brother? I felt like I was suffocating, like the walls were closing in. How could you do this to me? I demanded, my voice breaking. How could he? I never meant for this to happen, she said, her voice pleading. It just happened. I didn't want to hear another word. I stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind me. My hands were shaking. My chest felt like it was going to explode, and all I could think about was the betrayal. The next day, I confronted Liam. He didn't deny it. I'm sorry, Alex, he said, though his tone lacked any real remorse. But you know how these things are. You can't control who you fall in love with. You don't fall in love with your brother's fiancée, I shot back. You don't destroy someone's life just because you can. Liam shrugged, as if that was supposed to make me feel better. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. Grace and we're meant to be together. I wanted to punch him. I wanted to scream and throw things and make him feel just a fraction of the pain he'd caused me. But I didn't. Instead, I walked away. I cut them both out of my life after that. I didn't go to their wedding, didn't respond to their messages, and stopped attending family gatherings if I knew they'd be there. My parents tried to intervene, saying things like, Liam didn't mean to hurt you, and Grace was obviously confused. But I didn't want to hear it. To me, Liam and Grace were dead. The months after Grace and Liam's betrayal were the hardest of my life. It wasn't just the heartbreak. It was the humiliation. Everywhere I went, I felt like people were talking about me, pitying me. My brother had stolen the love of my life, and I was left to pick up the pieces. I poured myself into my work. Coding had always been my escape, and now it became my lifeline. I started taking on extra projects, staying late at the office, and teaching myself new skills on weekends. If I could just stay busy enough, maybe I wouldn't have time to think about what had happened. It wasn't easy, though. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake replaying every moment in my head. The way Grace used to smile at me, the way Liam smirked when I confronted him, the hollow look in my parents' eyes when they told me to move on. But slowly, things started to get better. I moved to a new apartment, far away from the places that reminded me of Grace and Liam. I started going to the gym, something I'd never had time for before. It wasn't just about getting in shape. It was about proving to myself that I could change, that I wasn't defined by what had happened to me. And then, one day, I met Emily. It was a chance encounter at a coffee shop. I was running on 3 hours of sleep after pulling an all-nighter on a project, and I accidentally bumped into her, spilling her coffee all over her book. I stammered out an apology, fully expecting her to snap at me, but instead, she laughed. It's fine, she said, her eyes sparkling with amusement. I needed an excuse to take a break from this anyway. We ended up talking for over an hour. Emily was warm and down-to-earth, the kind of person who made you feel like you'd known her forever. She had a sharp sense of humor and a knack for making even the most mundane stories sound interesting. At first, I was hesitant to let her in. My trust had been shattered, and I wasn't sure I could handle another heartbreak. But Emily was patient. She didn't push me to talk about Grace or Liam, didn't pry into my past. She just showed up. She was there when I needed a friend, when I needed someone to remind me that not everyone was out to hurt me. Over time, my feelings for her grew. She wasn't just kind. She was strong in a quiet, unassuming way. She didn't try to outshine me or compete with me. She was simply herself, and that was enough. While my life was slowly coming together, Liam's was falling apart. I heard bits and pieces through mutual friends and family. His charm could only take him so far, and without substance to back it up, he was floundering. He'd started a business that failed within a year, leaving him in debt. Then came the gambling. At first, it was just poker nights with his friends, but soon he was frequenting casinos, losing more money than he could afford. Grace stuck by him at first. She wasn't the type to give up easily, and I imagine she probably felt guilty for how their relationship had started. But even she had her limits. Did you hear about Liam and Grace? My mom asked me one day when I finally agreed to visit for dinner. I stiffened. What about them? They're separated, she said cautiously. watching my reaction. Grace left him a few months ago. She couldn't handle the gambling, the debt, everything. She's moved back in with her parents. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to gloat, to revel in the fact that Liam was finally paying the price for his actions. But another part of me felt nothing. It was like all the anger I'd held onto for so long had burned out, leaving me empty. I don't want to talk about them, I said firmly, and my mom nodded, dropping the subject. Months turned into years. Emily and I got married in a small, intimate ceremony. She didn't care about flashy venues or extravagant decorations. She just wanted to celebrate our love with the people who mattered most. It was the happiest day of my life, a reminder that I'd found something real, something that couldn't be taken away from me. But Liam's shadow loomed over my happiness. Every so often, I'd hear whispers about him, how he'd sold his car to pay off a debt, how he was living in a rundown apartment, how he'd burned bridges with nearly everyone who'd once supported him. I thought I'd moved on, that I'd left him and Grace behind me. But then, one rainy evening, there was a knock at my door. When Grace and Liam got married, they became the golden couple, or so everyone thought. On the surface, it looked like they had everything. Their social media pages were filled with smiling photos of vacations, fancy dinners, and picture-perfect moments. But like all facades, it didn't take long for the cracks to appear. Liam, for all his charm, had no real substance. He wasn't the type to stay focused or commit to hard work. After college, he bounced from one idea to the next, trying to cash in on quick business schemes. His latest venture was a tech startup, a flashy app that was supposed to revolutionize online networking. He managed to convince investors to pour money into it, but Liam's lack of experience quickly became apparent. Within a year, the company tanked. The app was buggy and barely functional, and competitors with more polished products ate up the market. The investors pulled out, leaving Liam drowning in debt. Grace, ever the optimist, tried to support him. She started working longer hours at her design firm to keep them afloat, but the financial strain was taking its toll. Friends began to notice her smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. She stopped posting online, the once frequent updates about their perfect life disappearing completely. Liam, meanwhile, started gambling. It began innocently enough. Poker nights with friends, betting on sports games, but soon it spiraled out of control. He convinced himself that one big win would solve all their problems. Instead, he lost everything. Grace confronted him when she found out. "Liam, we can't afford this," she said, her voice breaking. "Do you even realize how much debt we're in? I'm working 12-hour days just to keep us from losing the house." But Liam, ever the charmer, brushed it off. "Don't worry, babe. I've got it under control. It's just a rough patch." Except it wasn't just a rough patch. The debts kept piling up, and Grace's patience wore thin. She tried to talk to him, to make him see reason, but Liam wouldn't listen. His pride wouldn't let him admit he was wrong. The breaking point came when Liam took out a second mortgage on their house without telling Grace. She found the paperwork one evening while organizing their bills, and the betrayal was the final straw. "You mortgaged our house?" she screamed, holding up the documents. "Without telling me?" "I had to," Liam shouted back, his face red with anger. "It was the only way to keep things afloat." Grace shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this anymore, Liam. I can't keep cleaning up your messes. You've ruined everything." A week later, she packed her bags and left. Liam's life unraveled after that. With no one to lean on, he spiraled deeper into debt and desperation. He lost the house, his car, and nearly all his friends. The charm that had once opened doors for him was now a hollow shell, useless against the mountain of problems he'd created. By the time I heard about all of this, it had been years since I'd last spoken to Liam or Grace. My parents mentioned his struggles in passing, but I didn't ask for details. I told myself I didn't care. Liam had made his bed, and now he had to lie in it. But deep down, I felt a pang of pity. For all his flaws, Liam was still my brother. And for all her betrayal, I knew Grace didn't deserve the mess she'd been dragged into. Still, I kept my distance. My life was finally stable, and I wasn't about to let their drama pull me back in. One cold evening, as I was sitting on the couch with Emily, there was a knock at the door. "Are you expecting someone?" she asked, looking up from her book. I shook my head. No. I walked to the door, half expecting it to be a neighbor or a delivery mix-up. But when I opened it, I froze. There he was, Liam. He looked like a shadow of the person I once knew. His clothes were wrinkled and stained, his hair disheveled, and his face gaunt. His eyes, once so full of confidence, were now hollow and pleading. "Alex," he said, his voice cracking, "I need your help." For a moment, I just stared at him, unsure of what to say. 1,000 emotions raced through me. Anger, pity, sadness. "Can I come in?" he asked, shivering in the cold. I stood frozen at the door, staring at Liam. It was hard to reconcile the man standing before me with the brother I once knew. He looked smaller somehow, as if life had stripped him of the confidence and charm that had defined him for so long. "Alex," he said again, his voice trembling, "please, can we talk?" For a moment, I didn't respond. Memories of his betrayal came flooding back. Grace's tearful confession, Liam's smug indifference, the years of pain I'd endured while he carried on as if nothing had happened. But then I saw the desperation in his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged under the weight of whatever burden he was carrying. "Come in," I said finally, stepping aside. Liam walked in hesitantly, his movements slow and uncertain. I led him to the living room, where Emily was sitting. She looked up, surprised to see him. "Liam," she said cautiously, glancing at me for an explanation. "It's fine," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure it was. "We'll talk in the kitchen." Liam followed me into the kitchen, and I gestured for him to sit at the table. He hesitated, then sank into a chair, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "What do you want, Liam?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He let out a long sigh, rubbing a hand over his face. "I know I'm the last person you want to see, and I don't blame you. After everything I've done, I don't deserve your help." "You're right about that," I said sharply. "So why are you here?" He flinched at my tone, but he didn't look away. "Because I've got nowhere else to go. I've lost everything, Alex. Grace, the house, my job, everything." I raised an eyebrow. "And you think that's my problem?" "No," he said quickly. "I know it's not, but you're my brother, and I don't know where else to turn. I've burned every bridge I had. You're the only person who might still care." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken regret. "Why should I care?" I asked, my voice cold. "You didn't care when you stole Grace from me. You didn't care when you destroyed our family. So why should I care about you now?" Liam looked down at his hands, his shoulders slumping even further. "You're right," he said quietly. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm not asking for that. I just need a chance to fix my life, to start over." I stared at him, searching for any sign that he was lying, that this was just another one of his manipulative schemes. But all I saw was a broken man, desperate and humbled. "Do you even realize what you did to me?" I asked, my voice rising. "Do you have any idea how much pain you caused? You didn't just betray me, Liam. You destroyed my trust in everyone. It took me years to rebuild my life, to find someone who actually cared about me. And now you show up, expecting me to help you?" Tears welled up in Liam's eyes, and for the first time, I saw real remorse. "I know I hurt you," he said, his voice shaking, "and I'll never forgive myself for that. I was selfish, and I didn't think about how my actions would affect you. I've regretted it every day since. But Alex, I'm begging you. Please, just give me a chance." I turned away, running a hand through my hair. Part of me wanted to throw him out, to make him feel the same rejection and pain he had caused me. But another part of me, a part one didn't want to acknowledge, felt pity. He was still my brother, no matter what he'd done. After a long silence, I spoke. "You can stay, but only for a week. And don't think for a second that this means I've forgiven you." Liam nodded quickly, relief flooding his face. "Thank you, Alex. I swear, I'll make this right." The next few days were tense. Liam kept to himself for the most part, sleeping on the couch and avoiding Emily and me as much as possible. I caught him staring at family photos on the wall, his expression unreadable. One evening, As I was working on my laptop, he sat down across from me. "Can we talk?" he asked hesitantly. I sighed, closing my laptop. "What is it?" "I want you to know how sorry I am," he said, his voice sincere. "Not just for Grace, but for everything. For taking you for granted. For thinking I was better than you. I was wrong, Alex. About so many things." I didn't say anything, unsure of how to respond. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he continued, "but I want to try to be a better person. And I need your help to do that." I studied him for a moment, trying to gauge his sincerity. "It's not my job to fix you, Liam," I said finally. "You're the only one who can do that." "I know," he said, "but I can't do it alone." Liam's words lingered in my mind long after our conversation ended. I wanted to believe he was sincere, that he truly wanted to change, but trust wasn't something I could give him easily, not after everything he'd done. Over the next few days, Liam made an effort to show me he was serious. He cleaned up around the house, cooked meals for Emily and me, and even went out of his way to help with small errands. It wasn't much, but it was more than I had expected. One evening, as we were sitting in the living room, Liam broke the silence. "Do you remember when we were kids and we built that treehouse in the backyard?" I looked up from my book, caught off guard by the sudden nostalgia. "Yeah, I remember. You fell out of it the first day." Liam chuckled, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "I thought I was invincible back then." "You thought you were invincible until Mom made you climb back up," I said, a hint of amusement in my tone. For the first time in years, we shared a laugh. It was small, but it felt significant, like a crack in the wall that had stood between us for so long. As the week went on, Liam began opening up more. He told me about the mistakes he had made, the shame he felt, and how he had let his pride ruin everything. He admitted that losing Grace was his wake-up call, though he now realized she had left him for the same reasons she had fallen for him. His charm and superficial promises couldn't sustain a real relationship. "I didn't just fail her," Liam said one night, his voice thick with emotion. "I failed myself, and I failed you. I didn't respond right away. Part of me still wanted to hold on to my anger, to remind him of the pain he had caused. But another part of me, one that I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge, wanted to let go." "You can't undo the past, Liam," I said finally. "But if you're serious about changing, it's going to take more than words. You have to prove it, to yourself and to everyone else." "I know," he said, "and I will. I just hope it's not too late to fix things." The turning point came one afternoon when Liam asked if he could join me at work. "I've been thinking about trying something new," he said. "Maybe it's time I stopped chasing shortcuts and actually learned how to build something." I hesitated. Letting him into my professional world felt like a risk, but I decided to give him a chance. I brought him to the office and introduced him to my team. To my surprise, Liam showed genuine interest in what we were doing. He asked questions, took notes, and even offered to help with a small project. Over the next few weeks, Liam started taking online courses to learn coding. It wasn't easy for him. He struggled with the technical concepts and often got frustrated. But he didn't give up. For the first time in his life, Liam was putting in real effort, and it showed. Emily noticed the change too. "He's different," she said one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. "I think he really wants to make things right." "I hope so," I said, though a part of me still held on to my doubts. As Liam continued to rebuild his life, I found myself reevaluating our relationship. I realized that holding on to my anger wasn't just hurting him. It was holding me back too. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting what he had done, but it meant freeing myself from the weight of the past. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I turned to Liam. "You've come a long way," I said, "but you still have a lot to prove." "I know," he said quietly, "but thank you, Alex, for giving me a chance." We sat in silence for a while, the unspoken understanding between us more powerful than words. In the months that followed, Liam continued to work on himself. He got a job as a junior developer at a small startup, slowly rebuilding his confidence and his life. We weren't back to being best friends, but we were brothers again, and that was a start. For the first time in years, I felt like we were both moving forward. Liam was learning to take responsibility for his actions, and I was learning to let go of the past. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of drama, redemption, and life's unexpected twists, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button if you found this story engaging, and leave a comment. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. More coming soon.